Alright guys, so what we have here is it's gonna be another build we just got in today. What we have here is a Preditor 212 Hemi block, and this is gonna be an all-out open modified build. So we're going for really high compression, we're going for a lot of flow. We're going to be putting on a big carburetor, stroker crank. Most likely, this is going to get oversized piston, welded block. So this is just the next project. Let's open up the box and see what we have for goodies. Let me get a knife. Alright, oh, we got a lot of stuff in this box. So first thing I pulled out is a valve. Valve seat. Valve seats. One to 3 ratio rockers. Now these are for the old style Predator. Looks like a set of chromoly push rods and maybe some spring shims, not sure. Another valve. Stainless steel, lash caps, still going. Okay, we have retainers and locks. These look like they're from ARC Racing. And finally, the springs. And that is it. So something else that was sent is a GX 160 cylinder head. This GX 160, hold on. So this is the combustion chamber here for the GX 160. Let me get some scissors and take a closer look at those valves. If I can get it out. So this is the intake, and this is the exhaust. And wow. So those are pretty tight fit in this cylinder head. This is hitting the wall, and neither one of these are actually able to seat right now. Like wedged in there. So if you look at the size seat that it comes with stock, and then look at that valve. So, well, what else was sent in was the seats. So we'll take a look and see the size of the seat difference. So this is the size intake we're going to be putting in. Massive. And I'm pretty sure these seats are going to be overlapping. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're going to have... They can't even fit in the chamber. So they're definitely going to be seats overlapping. So what this cylinder head's going to get is a 3228, I'm pretty sure those valves are. So a 3228, and this is a Hemi block, but I was sent a GX160 cylinder head for this engine. So I'm pretty sure he knows about the differences that was discussed. So if you don't know about the differences, what I have here is another, well, so this is an actual Hemi head. And if you look at the rockers on a Hemi head compared to a non-Hemi head, they're different. This one is set up with shaft style rockers, and this one has stud type rockers. This is just another head that's here. It's a Hemi head, so figured I would just have this here. This one is getting a welded combustion chamber, milled 40,000 stage 3 port, 2725 valves. Pretty sure that's staying stock size valves. But this, why people want these 14cc heads is because it's a smaller combustion chamber to start. You know, there is differences in you know, valve size between this and say a Hemi head. These valves come stock a lot smaller. This guy was hell struck on staying with this head, even though I believe it would have been a better start with even the larger regular non-Hemi head, or you know, any of the GX200 style heads. This GX160 cylinder head, yes, because it has a smaller combustion chamber, it will give you higher compression, but you are going to have smaller ports and just a lot less metal to work with. And just a little another tidbit of information to add into this. Now this cylinder head, block and cylinder head, this has been asked of me to make 18:1 compression ratio. Why I don't like 18:1 compression ratio is there gets to be a point of what's called diminishing return. Now, as your engine's pumping, and so let me pause that for a second. This build is supposed to be a open modified build. He wants to turn a lot of RPMs, wants to make a lot of horsepower. Horsepower is RPM. When you start going to 18:1 compression ratio, I can make a cylinder head that has 18:1 compression ratio. But 18:1 compression ratio might add torque, but what it does when it gets above a certain level is it increases the pumping forces of the engine. So when it's coming up to compress that air, all that compression, it's a lot harder for that piston to come up under its own power. And especially if you add like a lightweight flywheel, this is where a lot of power can be lost. So the engine build itself is important, knowing how to build an engine. So if you take something like a lightweight flywheel, which is going to be on this, and that 18:1 compression ratio, that 18-to-1 compression ratio is going to draw the power down at high RPMs. It might give you a lot of low end torque and a lot of that bottom end acceleration, maybe, or it might all around diminish power. But what it will do on high RPM is create more, it takes more power to make the power. So it gets to a point with compression ratio where more isn't better. Also, another thing I don't like about the 14cc cylinder heads is valve shrouding. Valve shrouding is a real problem. One of the reasons I really like Hemi heads on a Preditor 212 is because the valve is mostly unshrouded. The shape of the chamber and the way the valves are angled, when they angle that valve, when the valve lifts up, it's coming away from the floor of the chamber because it's at an angle. When this valve, you see how it is here, and I'm going to have to scribe the head gasket on this, and to keep 18-to-1 compression ratio, I'm not going to be able to take any material out of this. I'm going to have to put material into this and mill it. So the reason he's going with this head is because he has a large lift cam. And he's under the impression that, and he's right, that it would cost more to do a Hemi head. There's different costs that occur with the pistons that you need, with valve reliefs, etc., etc. So this is based on budget. But it just kind of sees, you know, I don't really see the plan. So what I don't like about the way these valves sit is by being this stuffed in a combustion chamber, and by not being able to remove the material adequately around the valves. If you notice when I do my chambers, I remove like all this material here, and I'll remove all the material down here, and I'll really even take some of this material out here. But this intake valve is going to be shrouded all the way from here to here. So putting in the bigger valve might actually have the same amount of flow as a smaller valve. Now you're just lifting a heavier valve. So those are just some things to think about, and a little bit of editing I wanted to pop in there. So back to the video. Seeing as though this has stud rockers, he's going the route of 1 to 3 stamped steel rockers. I wouldn't recommend stamped steel rockers. I don't remember off the top of my head what we selected for a cam. It's in the notebook over there, but you know, if you get up in higher lifts, especially with ratio rockers, you are putting a lot of stress on a stamped steel rocker. They will perform, they will do it. Just, I have never torture tested these. I've heard stories of these failing. So just some information to put out there. These are relatively inexpensive. So basically, when you look at this build, what you're seeing is a cheap way of going about a build. Preditor Hemi block, you have the big bore, the big stroke right out of the box. You take this 14cc cylinder head, put it on that block, you now have a high compression cylinder head. When you do the cylinder head, you get to go with some of the cheaper options like these 3-to-1 gauge rockers, or sorry, these are not gauge, but stamped steel rockers. What I'm doing to this head is porting stage 3, 5-angle valve job, bronze guides. I'm going to put the littlest bit of weld down here. His goal compression ratio is absolutely bananas, and we are going to be installing these larger valves. I would not recommend this setup. Those valves with this ports and the way we're going to be doing this head is not ideal. I've expressed that to the customer. He chose to go this route. So, you know, you're the boss. I'll do anything. Gave me permission to film the parts opening. So this is the stuff we're working with today. A preferable Hemi setup, if you're going with the 212, would be the full-size head, whether it's the Hemi or non-Hemi. You know, keeping it up into the 20cc chamber, combustion chamber when you get it. That way I'm able to get in there and do a better job at shaping it, because this combustion chamber shape is not ideal like this. He's just going this route. He's trying to keep the cost down, and by all means, you know, keeping the cost down. You know, everybody has their own builds and their own budget. So we're going to be putting these bigger valves in. I'll put the valves back in so you can take another look at that. And there's probably, this valve's up a little bit, so if it was down, there'd probably be about the 1/16 of an inch between them. So the seats are definitely going to be cut into each other. We're going to be doing a little bit of shaping in here, but our goal compression ratio is like 18:1 on this. I'm not really sure about the direction of this build. I know he's trying to go all out, fully modified. There would be different things I would do. I would definitely use a different head, but this is definitely one way of, you know, this will definitely give you a lot of compression. Not that much flow, not that much chamber work where, you know, dealing with cylinder fill and, you know, keeping that fuel atomized. There's real power to be made in just fuel delivery. Everybody just thinks about flow as air, you know, getting that air and the fuel mixture down into the bottom of the cylinder. That's what gives you horsepower, is being able to fill the cylinder, because at a high RPM, basically the engine just runs out of breath. You know, being able to get that air deep down into that cylinder better is how you create horsepower, because at high RPMs, you know, if it's 10,000 RPMs, 80 times opening and closing per second, there's just, with improper cylinder head design, there isn't enough time for that mixture of air and fuel to get down deep enough into the cylinder to create enough power to maintain the rise on the horsepower. So the engine runs out of breath. Opening up, putting bigger valves helps, but I was really at a stumbling point on my builds, and that's why I really got into that chamber design. That's what took it over the hill. You know, being able to direct the air down into the cylinder, you know, plays a huge role in horsepower. Also, on the negative, on the compression stroke, being able to keep that fuel air mixture moving to the point where you have a lot of movement as the spark is about to fire is another huge player in power. If the fuel and air coming into the head or to the cylinder changes speed at any time, what happens is those fuel droplets in the air, as they start slowing down, the ones behind it haven't slowed down yet, so they'll crash into those other droplets, and the droplets will start getting bigger. And as those droplets keep crashing into each other, as the air starts slowing down, the fuel begins to deatomize, and that's a loss of power. So being able to keep the air atomized, the air to fuel mixture atomized, and that's one of the reasons I actually built a custom box that I have that shows me how, you know, a lot of people just focus on the, flow bench. You know, I have videos in my playlist where you can see now, did work on flow benches, got some great numbers, which gave me a great port design. And it was a necessary step. But that just takes it from the carb to the back of the valve. The next step is, what does the air-fuel mixture do once it's entered into the cylinder? Maintaining all of these things at optimum levels through the entire 4 cycles. This engine is not just an intake. You know, everyone just wants to worry about intake porting, intake porting, intake porting. That's a huge part. But this is a 4-stroke engine. It has 4 cycles. You know, even creating a 5th cycle, you know, which is the tuning part of it, you know, harnessing the exhaust, which is a lot further than we need to get into this, but the chamber design alone plays a massive role in taking that intake cycle and rolling it over into the compression cycle. So that's how you have to optimize every single cycle of that engine. But here's a look at the next project. I'm kind of rambling on now. Until next time, guys, have a good day. Thank you for watching Paul's Karts. I'm Paul, and my telephone number is 781-492-7358. Call me for projects or information. Thanks, and have a good day.